do a whole lot of 20 to 21 here because we have time. That's okay. But we can do some stuff in the other, and I'll show you in a sense. If I can get down here. I've already showed you the fact that I've got some of these things highlighted. Okay, these are things that a lot of interpretation of the text are going to go into these areas. Okay? So those are, I want to make sure that I include when I get not to the analytical but to the exegetical outline. Now I go through it one more time here to see, just simply to see if there's anything now that we've finished our work that needs that I need to include beyond what we've done and that we've already noted. One thing I might include, would probably include here, that I didn't do, you see this section here was an individual issue, and then that got expanded when we were down here into corporate issue. See what I'm saying? So to indicate that I want to touch upon that in my outline, because I think it's important, then what I'm going to do is just highlight. I've got to get out of this whole screen here somewhere. Okay. And then I'm going to highlight that, which will remind me that what I'm trying to do there. Okay. And I want to include that because I've got a note here that takes me back to the preceding idea. Okay. Love, I've got to do something with that, especially since translations are going to differ when we deal with this. Okay. Let's see. I don't think I would do anything more there. That the interrogative I will utilize, no doubt, in a sermon to raise the same question that the text does and try to get people to think it through quickly. And that's how it will work in the sermon. Okay. I would certainly deal with that little conjunction and the two infinitives because there's so much confusion that goes on there, and I would want to clarify that. Let's see, I don't think we've done anything different there. There's a few things I could do, but I don't go much beyond that, I think. And this one, of course, is hina clauses I'll deal with. And that'd probably be how I outline the whole thing. The way I've interpreted it, and I outline it, probably based on those three object clauses that I interpreted that. And I would end up concluding down here with the ultimate idea. Okay. We won't do anything with these things in our outline. Analytical outline. So let's just kind of talk our way through this and maybe think it through. Maybe you can come up with a good analysis as well. In an analytical outline, basically we're wanting to get the contents of the idea down, the contents of it. Okay? Not so much all the interpretation of it, but the contents. So the outline tends to be much more limited than does the exegetical outline. Okay? So this is kind of related to the whole book in one sense, but in another sense we could include some of these things here, especially if we were using this to produce a sermon. We'd have a sermon title, we'd have a theme or some sort of hypothesis we're trying to get across, and there would be some divisions and whatnot of our book. Okay? Now what I've done is I've taken the previous outline that I had, which you may not remember. Of course, you wouldn't know I was I'll put this right up front. When we were dealing with outlines, I had, this is the Walls' outline on our section. He said, a prayer for love, to maintain the church's practical unity. Okay? Then we have the content of the prayer in 3:14 to 19. And then the immensity of God's resources in 3:20 to 21. Having done my exegesis there, I don't quite see this outline, this focus in this outline. For instance, in my mind, it wouldn't be so much a prayer for love. Okay? It would be a prayer for understanding God with a secondary issue. If you understand God and related property to God, then love would be an accompaniment of that. Okay, so in this outline, I couldn't buy into that one. Now, my own outline was this way, which you'll see was changed because it doesn't indicate anything here about a prayer, which it is. It's a prayer. I like the idea of empowerment. That's a result clause from that infinitive, which I've keyed off, or that first hint clause. I probably would. That's okay. But I got to expand upon that. Comprehension is the second hint clause. You see, I'm not defining it here, and the filling is the third hint clause. See? Okay, so now, when I come to my outline, I've broken it down. I've changed the wording here to more reflect what it seems like it's happening in my interpretation, even though this is not an exegetical outline. Prayer for the incarnation of God in the church. Prayer number 1. Incarnation of God idea plays off of the third inner clause, which you see, I see one just being a little more definitive of the other. And so this concept that I've kind of put here is kind of capsulizing what he's talking about, be filled with God, to have God filled with us, if you will, and be walking, living examples of the divine person and character. So, anyway, that may or may not be a good overall title for that, but that's where I started. That's where I ended up in my present situation. Empowerment, 14 to 17a. That's got to be expanded, and it will. Empowerment, how? There's at least a couple of things that will show up in my exegetical. Comprehension, 17b to 19a. That's the second unit clause, essentially. Okay? I'll have to deal with the comprehension of what and how the two ideas of love and comprehension fit together. Fulfillment, that's the third inner clause. That's the goal, right? And playing the wording, just simply playing off of the verb. And 20 to 21, confidence, that's verse 20. The doxology in 21, which I may or may not expand for us right now. So that's what you would start with in the exegetical, to do an exegetical outline. Now your outline may be more, definitive than this. I mean, you may have more pieces to it. That's okay. But certainly my exegetical outline has got to go beyond this. Okay? So it portrays the interpretation of the passage, not just the contents of the passage. Okay? It's the key difference. It will be more detailed, and his wording is going to try to include those exegetical observations. Okay? So I'm going to overlay the analytical outline. Okay? Then I'm going to find out where my main divisions are, and key sentences and key clauses and wording to bring out the interpretation. So I'm going to work through this one. I'm not going to do anything more here right now. This is where the difficulty comes. Okay, so I would take this one and I would say, okay, what I got to do here is in 14, 17 to 17a, I've got to look at my text here. So we'll look at our text. And try to figure out what are the key issues there that I need to include. And initially, so what I'm going to do is just simply I'm just going to indicate what I already noted for myself had to be dealt with. Right? And then I'll go back and reword the thing. Okay? But I know I have to deal with the, what was that? What is that? Yeah, the 2-2 passage. I know I got to deal with that in this section. Okay. I know, and I remember I had to deal with. I had. I printed it out. I had it. Okay, 2-2. Then I want to deal with the source idea and the concept of family. Okay, then I want to deal with the naming thing. Let me just start with that. Okay, so I want to deal with the issue of source. I'll just put this down. I'll come back to that, reword that. The name, the families idea, and then name. Okay, the naming. Okay, so I want that to be in there somehow. Let's see that. Name. Then I've got the wealth of the glory, power, strength, and the spirit to dwell. Okay, so I want to include something on the abundance of the glory. I'll just put that together. Do that there together. Okay, what else did I say? Be strengthened with power and the Holy Spirit in there in Christ dwelling. So, strengthened with power. Okay, the Spirit. Okay. What was the other thing?
Inner man.
Did I have the inner? Okay. The problem with that one is I'll have the inner man in there. The problem with that is it's going to encompass two parts, which is actually going to be good for the message, for developing it, to show the interrelationships between the two. It's going to deal with two menopause. So, anyway, that's what I want to include. We get all it down, and then I'll go back and start to rework it with the spirit I had dwell in your hearts. Christ dwell. Christ, what do you call that again? Christ, taking up residence. Or the result clause, but as a result, Christ residence. Okay, so these are just ideas right now. Now I got to go back and now I got to work it in. Some of these things can be grouped together, probably in my outline. Okay, and some of them will be independent ideas. Now, right here. So somehow, when I begin to deal in this area here, somehow I've got to connect this up. Okay, you've got to connect up at the very beginning here with the context. So this is almost going to be background. I'm just going to put ideas down here, and I got to go back and reword. Okay. Let's see, I want to get Greek on that. Okay. So. Let me write it this way. I got to connect this up to chapter 2. Okay? 2:19 to whatever. Okay, following. It's going to be, somehow it's going to be background. To get the people and to get everybody up to speed as to where we're kicking off from. Okay? And in doing that, then, going back to when we talk about that, what I would end up wanting to deal with would be to bring out the final concept that in which also you, that is in the church, in this building, are to build up into a habitation of God by or in the Spirit, right? So and that would lead to, see, where God lives, right? And then what we're going to end up with is where He lives, but it's in us, right? So there's a connectedness there. Okay? So I've got to somehow make that connection. So I've got to bring the context up and bring that background in. And then, since I think that would work fairly well, I would have that be pointer, I've got to reword all this, pointer to 3:19b, which is where I'm going to conclude, probably. Right? Now I'm going to come back with some other wording, but these are the key issues I'm going to that I want to bring through here. Now, that may be in one point, or I may have one or two different elements to this. Okay? And I would start, no doubt, with, in the message it would be, now our text starts with, because of this. Right? What is this referring to? Right? Then we would go and connect it up. I connect back to 3:1, I connect back to 19, chapter 2 and forward, then I'd move forward from there, and I'd jump from 19:22 up to my passage and into the end of my passage. Probably all at once. Okay? Just to show that connectedness, contextual issue. I would connect families. I would think now I could connect the source from God of every family finds its source in God and its identification in God. Okay? Right? That's in fact what I would probably do at this point. So I would probably connect them all together. Let's see if I got a basic shape that I could use here. I could probably put one of these. I don't know how to get rid of that something. I don't know how to get rid of that thing there and move it to where I want.
Just grab onto your bracket and move it outside the box.
What, this thing here?
Yeah.
Just move it outside the box.
And then click back inside the box and hit delete. No, drag it back out. Now hit delete and then delete the box.
How come they make it so hard to work this stuff?
It's more fun that way.
Oh. Okay. Well, what I want to do, I'm just going to at this point indicate, well, these three ideas are going to be grouped together. Okay, so I'm going to reword those in one fashion, and it might involve three different ideas. I might start with where it starts, every family, right, and relate that into the in heaven and earth, which includes, it's universal at that point. Nobody escapes. Then, having said nobody escapes, relate to the fact that it says that the source of the family is the very creator, the father, the originator is God. So every one of these families, it finds its source in God, and therefore it also finds its identity in God, because He's the author, the namer, the one who establishes that identity. So I grouped that together, but it'll probably be three parts, and I'll have to come back and reword that. Right? So those are the ideas that I'm going to do there. I think that rewording idea, so that would be one point here. It would be the second point would come there. The third point, I think I could then also take these next 4 points and group them together probably. No, first I have to do this one first, I think, because it would be somewhat complicated. That is, it would be rather extensive. Okay, I would certainly have to deal with the defining of the concept of divine glory. Right? Otherwise, you've lost it all if I can't get that across. Okay? So then I have to do that, and I'll reword it in such a way so that the word glory is transforming itself into my preferred term, self-revelation, divine self-revelation. So I'm going to transform that in somehow. Okay. And then these three can be worked together here. I don't know if those can you copy that thing and just do another one. We'll find out. Yeah. So I'll work these three together as the idea that the strengthening, the powerful strengthening, or what you will, is a product of understanding God's character and God's person. And the application of that is going to be on the inner person, that is within the individual by the Holy Spirit. Okay, so that's where the strengthening is going to be. And this could stand as itself as a result. That is, a result of this business would be that Christ is able to, find a home within. Okay? And I would then expand this. I would have to expand this to include, to move from individual to corporate. So I'm going to have to reword it so I can get it from the individual to the corporate application. And that's what seems to be happening here. Okay. So now all these sections I'm going to have at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to have